And in order to counter all of the left's narratives, I think that there are three main ingredients that make the counter-narrative most potent. And one, obviously, is the facts, and you have to get them right. Flair, a sense of storytelling that's going to be able to match what the left really does so well. You've got all of these people who've been steeped in English and humanities departments on college campuses. Some of them, not the ones that are writing signs for Occupy Wall Street, but there are some of them out there that are very good writers and storytellers. They've studied Marshall Gans. They know how to ply their wares. They know how to pull the heartstrings. And nowhere is that more stark than, of course, with Obamacare and this entire catalog of Obamacare fables, where they put out a victim, somebody who has been robbed of their health or their lives by the evil insurers. And this is such a potent storyline. And over again, there are so many individual bloggers, both at the grassroots level, at the state level, and at the national level, who try to debunk these many stories, whether it was Marcellus Owens, who was the little boy that both Harry Reid and Obama dragged up for their press conferences before Obamacare was passed and during the signing. He claimed that his mother was somehow a victim of not having nationalized health insurance, when it turns out the details, not only of her illness, but of what was available to her in a very liberal state like Washington State, which offers a plethora of government coverage. And it's frustrating sometimes when your story doesn't get picked up, and obviously I have a little bit more clout than some other bloggers, but a lot of times I feel like I'm back in 2004 when you feel like you're a voice in the wind. But I think that the analogy that I use, for the loose organization of conservative bloggers, some of whom are supported by FreedomWorks and other groups, but others who are just their own lone wolves out there. It's sort of like there's a military charity, and what they do is they ask people to crochet little squares, and then you send all your squares in together, and somebody knits them all together into a much larger blanket or quilt, and then they send these off to the military or to military families. And in a way, each and every one of us is like that. We're crocheting our own little squares every day. And when somebody takes the time to knit all of these stories together, pow, you get a very powerful counter picture or counter narrative. And I think that's what's happened with Obamacare. To the audience that's open enough to look at it, and with the example that you gave, to the forceful response to this idea that A, the Tea Party is violent and racist, and B, that somehow that they were responsible for Gabby Giffords, and any number of random acts of violence that have happened across the country. And I did that on my own blog, where I took tons and tons and tons of examples and stitched it into 2 separate blog posts that who knows how many people may have seen it at the time, but it's there for posterity. And I think that's how everybody has to think of their own blog. Even if somebody's not paying attention, you don't know how large or small your audience may be at any single point. It's there in the blogosphere, on Google search, forever. So the 2 posts I've done, one was called Blame Righty, and it talked about all the tons of examples where there was this knee-jerk impulse to blame the Tea Party or blame conservatives for things that had nothing to do, in some cases, with ideology, or in other cases, the perpetrators of said violence were clearly mentally ill, and that is obviously the case with the Gabby Gifford shooter, but with others, the Holocaust Museum shooter, who was as mad at Fox News as he was against other causes. The wacko who flew a plane into an IRS building in Texas was immediately tagged as some sort of anti-tax, anti-government nut. Again, somebody with a very mixed bag history, and on and on and on it goes. Same thing with the climate of hate. And for those who are OGs in the audience, there are no new stories. I mean, we've been there, done that with all of these cards, all of these slimes against the conservative movement. sometimes you get a little bored doing it because it's like, okay, this is the 5,000th post I've done on the playing of the race card. But I think it matters, again, just as our own blogosphere of record, to put it down, to make people take notice one way or the other. And I think the climate of hate charge, the insane rage charge from the likes of Paul Krugman and Frank Rich at the New York Times has just become so laughable that even some of the left are embarrassed by it as well. And I remember when I posted the Progressive Climate of Hate, which went through every single kind of violence and profanity that's been leveled at the right over the last several years, almost a decade now, that even Roger Ebert, after I tweeted it, said, she has a point. And that's a win. That's a score. When you can be so in your face with these people with repetition and force that they're finally beaten, figuratively, into submission.